Many of us know what it's like to lose someone, whether it's a friend or a family member. It can really be devastating.
Yeah, oftentimes it feels like we'll never get over that grief. This morning on National Grief Awareness Day, we're learning ways to cope and heal. To explain, I'm joined by psychologist Julie Kaplow. Good morning, Julie. Good to see you.
Good morning. It's great to see you.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit, Julie, about what grief can look like, because I imagine it can look differently in different people.
Absolutely. Grief is made up of all of the emotions and feelings and thoughts and behaviors that we have after a person dies. And I think the most important thing to note is that there is no right or wrong way to grieve, and there's no set timeline for grief. So our society often tells us that, you should be over it after a year. And the bottom line is that grief is a natural reflection of the love we have for the person who died. And so we never get over it. It can ebb and flow over time, but it doesn't go away.
Yeah, talk about the importance of taking time to grieve, though, because life continues to move on. We still have responsibilities. Sometimes you still have to parent a child or, whatever your personal responsibilities are. And you often pour yourself into those things without taking time to grieve. So why would that be bad for somebody to do that?
Yes, sometimes we spend so much time trying to avoid those painful thoughts and feelings that we keep ourselves busy and we don't take the time to really think about or process those feelings. And that's incredibly important to do, to be able to sit with your feelings, to be able to actually feel that pain, because we know that if we don't do that, it can manifest in other ways that are not so healthy. So sometimes people will mask that pain through substance abuse or risk-taking behaviors, or even just withdrawing from the people that love and need them. So it's incredibly important to be able to talk about it openly.
Yeah, and talking about, Haley mentioned children. If you have a child, is there an easy way, I guess, to explain grief to kids? Before maybe they're going through it, that might help them when they do face that.
It's a great question. And I think that sometimes as caring adults, we never want to talk about grief with kids because we're worried about upsetting them. But the bottom line is that if a child actually does lose a loved one, the most validating thing we can do is to talk about it and to mention the person's name and to tell stories about the person and to give the child an opportunity to talk about their person or even ask questions if they're confused or concerned or worried about even how the person died. These are conversations that we really need to have, and that in and of itself can be incredibly healing for kids. But in terms of how we explain grief to children, we really say the same thing we say to adults, is that there's no right or wrong way to grieve, that grieving can feel sad at times. It can also feel positive or happy when we think about the positive memories we had of the person. So grief doesn't always have to be filled with pain.
Mm-hmm. Good to know. But if you are that friend who's wanting to offer support and say, you're having fun that day and laughing, and maybe you don't want to bring up a story because you assume the other person isn't thinking about it, is that an accurate way to think? And how could we offer our support as a friend?
When we talk to bereaved adults and children, what they always tell us is that it never upsets them to have someone say, I was thinking about your dad the other day and I really miss him, or I had a funny memory of your brother. Those kinds of conversations are so validating and comforting to children. And so we want to be able to approach that with kids and certainly give them choices. We don't have to be talking about it all the time, but keeping that door to communication open is incredibly important, so that kids feel like they have the outlet that they need to be able to talk about those feelings.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about these steps? Are there specific steps, I guess, to take to heal or cope?
When we think about grief, there are really three primary grief reactions that people typically have. The first is separation distress, and that's really missing the person. The second is identity distress, where we feel lost without the person. And the third is circumstance-related distress, where we feel very preoccupied with how they died. And the steps that we can take are really addressing all of those. The first to address separation distress is finding healthy ways of connecting to the person person, whether that's memorializing them, talking about them, doing something in their honor. The second, identity distress, finding and thinking about ways that behaviors that you had in common with the person, positive traits or behaviors that you can carry on in a way. And the third, with circumstance-related distress, we can really transform those circumstances of the death into something meaningful that can help others. So that can feel very empowering, like, doing a marathon for breast cancer because someone's mother died of breast cancer, or, basically engaging in activities that somehow memorialize the person and also really address those circumstances under which they died.
Well, Julie Kaplow, I appreciate you joining us this morning. I know we've only begun to scratch the surface, but really on that note, if somebody is struggling with this, it would be very helpful for them to speak to somebody like you, a psychologist who's trained in this type of grief trauma.
Absolutely. Thank you
right.
so much for having me. And I will say that there are resources in our community for those who are grieving, including Bo's Place that offers peer support, and the Lucene Center for Trauma and Grief that provides no-cost teletherapy to children who've experienced the loss of a loved one.
That is very good information, and we will certainly clip that and put it on clicktohouston.com so more people can see it. Thank you so much, Julie Kaplow.